and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live and I'm Cyril Stober. Now, prior to the 2019 elections, there were speculations or predictions of doom that could threaten the nation's stability and cohesion. Nigerians, however, proved those speculations wrong as they elected their leaders in polls adjudged largely to be peaceful, free and fair. There were, of course, pockets of violence in some areas and other electoral malpractices, such as ballot box snatching, rigging, and vote buying, or see and buy, as some call it. The 2019 elections are not without lessons, top of which is the political maturity, the emerging pattern of voting where the electorate voted for individuals and not parties. Also among the lessons, the performance of the Independent National Electoral Commission. And for those who see politics as business investments, plus the role of godfathers, these are some of the issues we're examining tonight on NTA Tuesday Live. But first, let's get to see this report by Mie Ugidi.
Already provided a befitting space in its world to accommodate the 2019 general elections for posterity, as a lot has to be written about it, with a table of content of preparations, postponements, conduct of elections, inconclusive elections, among others. And the name of Mahmoud Yakubu, a professor of Nigerian history from the prestigious Oxford University, will not escape the writer's line of thought. And he was aware of the challenges ahead.
Anyone who cannot stand criticism and is chairman of INEC is in the wrong job. And I don't believe I'm in the wrong job.
But there was a time when this became a burden. The professor did not smile that day. Yes, when the elections were postponed 6 hours to the casting of the ballot due to logistic challenges.
Please, as much as I listen attentively to all your explanations and I cannot fault them, the only thing that is missing is, given all this fact that you know, why wait till 2:30 a.m. when most decent Nigerians are going to bed?
As chairman of INEC and on behalf of the Commission, we take full responsibility for what happened and we regret any inconvenience our decision might have caused. I thank you all and God bless you.
This sign of remorse from INEC revealed the resilience of the Nigerian politician.
We've had him, and I'm convinced that he's genuine, and all arrangement that he's making for a successful election.
After all that, Nigerians went to the polls, and President Muhammadu Buhari of the APC won the presidential seat, and National Assembly members also got elected, though with a few outstanding ones due to court litigations, while the state elections were not as lucky as that of the national elections, as 6 governorship elections were inconclusive, and many state assembly elections also outstanding. However, almost all that have now been concluded, including that of Bauchi State. But supplementary elections in Adamawa State is now scheduled for Thursday, 28th of March 2019, while that of Rivers State is April 13th, 2019. So, the elections are now over, and some describe the elections in some areas as elections without regulations, as ballot box snatching, non-use of smart card readers, molesting and kidnapping of election officials, delay in commencement of voting, and attacks on INEC offices were common sights, and INEC admits these lapses and called for common solution.
As a matter of urgency, the Commission will begin work on post-2019 election review and roadmap for 2023. There is a lot of work ahead, but very little time available. As a process governed by law, the success of elections in Nigeria depends to a large extent on the electoral legal framework, and most importantly, in ensuring adherence to the law. I want to assure you that we will continue to work with the incoming National Assembly to review and strengthen our electoral laws. But I want to appeal to the senators-elect to please start work early and conclude work on the electoral legal framework in good time, well ahead of the 2023 general elections.
However, other discussions on the postmortem of the 2019 elections and recommendations from domestic and foreign observers will contribute to improve on the process, just as discussions like this on Tuesday Live will also contribute to the recommendation box of INEC for better outing in 2023. Mie Ogidi, NT News.
All right, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let's start off by introducing our guest to you. I'd like to welcome to this program Mr. Oluwole Osaze Uzi. He is Director of Voter Education and Publicity, Independent National Electoral Commission. Thanks for being with us here tonight.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Let me also welcome Professor Jibrin Ibrahim, Senior Fellow, Center for Democracy and Development. It's a regional research, advocacy and training NGO in West Africa. Prof, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right, and joining us from our Lagos Network Center, we have Senator Olabi Durojaye, the former senator who represented Ogun East Senatorial District from 1999 to 2003. He's a lawyer, economist, and currently chairman board of the Nigerian Communications Commission. Thanks for being with us, Senator. Also in our Lagos Network Center is Honorable Farouk Adamu Aliu, who is a former minority leader of the House of Representatives. He's now a businessman. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, viewers.
All right. Well, as we always do, we acquaint you with the procedure. At the appropriate time, you can be part of the discussion in the studio. The numbers to call will be on your screen, and you can take advantage of them. However, we always say this every Tuesday. When your call gets through to the studio, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set, just reduce the volume. That's the way to avoid the echo or the hurlback. And the best way to know that your call has been passed through is you'll see your name appear on screen. Now, once that happens, it means your call has been passed through to the studio, and you can just go right ahead with a question or comment. Don't bother about the greetings. You don't have time. So go straight to the point. Keep it as brief as possible so others can also get on the line and also contribute their bits to this program. So once again, welcome to NTA Tuesday Live. And here we are, looking at the 2019 elections in retrospect. Well, Mr. Osaze Uzi, it's all but over now, save for Adamawa and Rivers. But largely, we can say we're done with those elections, and perhaps there would be issues raised later on. But let's begin to take a look at what it was like to superintend over those elections, and that's from the perspective of the election management body.
Well, thank you very much. I think that it was a huge challenge. The complexities of such that we haven't actually witnessed in our electoral history, borne by the fact that you have 91 political parties gearing up and who sponsored candidates. For the presidential, there were 73 political parties. And because of the recent history, electoral history, measures have to be taken or put into place, which will sound strange to ears and eyes of foreign observers or people who operate in other climes. So many people find it difficult to understand why, for example, that we print ballot papers to currency note standards with the same or similar security features. In addition to that, and the complexity in that is that, in addition, we have to customize those ballot papers. So whereas currency, like a Naira note, is universal tender throughout the Federation of Nigeria, the ballot papers you'll use in Sokoto will be different from the one used in Zamfara, from Kogi and anywhere else in the country. The ballot papers used for one particular local government or ward might even be different from the other ward, because sometimes it's the colors that change because of the way we are. And just like currency notes, you have to, or precious metals, you have to escort these materials under heavy security escort. Now, so these are, and I'll give you an example. When we commissioned the Nigerian Air Force to assist us with the logistics delivery in some states, we now found out that the mere tonnage of things to be moved was so much. In one sense, people will say we're ill-prepared to take on the task, but they accomplished that task with very well indeed, and I must commend the armed forces for their logistics assistance in that regard. So there are lots of issues you have to look at. 73 political parties contesting the presidential election. It was unprecedented in this annals of the history of elections in Nigeria. These are some of the issues, and then, of course, there were challenges, as you rightly said earlier on, which we had to deal with. The postponement first time around was as a result of some of these logistic challenges, and it was rather unfortunate, and the Commission took responsibility for that, but we felt it was better to have done that and have a better election at the end of the day than what we did. So these are some of the issues we had to grapple with. Of course, security was a major issue with armed state actors and non-state actors having a field day in some places. But let us not dwell on the negatives. It is not as if these were as widespread as is being portrayed. Out of 119,000 polling units, perhaps less than 5%, as you say, were affected or impacted by some of these issues. By and large, after the Adamawa supplementary election on Thursday, then we'll just go and conclude Rivers next week. And it is the supplementary elections that will be on the 13th of April. Mayor Gide's report made reference to that, but we'll first of all have to conclude collation and make declarations for those constituencies where we have not done so, like the governorship, because already we have declared in 21 state constituencies out of, I think, 30-something. So basically conclude the process, and if there's need for a supplementary, because elections could not take place, regrettably, in one of the local government areas and so on,
right.
That will necessitate supplementary elections on the 13th of April to conclude the process.
Okay, we'll return to some of the issues, but let's come to Professor Jibrin Ibrahim and ask his assessment of the elections up to this point.
This is a very difficult question, and I've seen different people with different assessments. One group saying this is the worst election in our history. The other group saying this is one of the best in our history. So how does one really assess these elections? I think there's a preliminary point to make, which is that in the lead up to the election, there was a lot of negative messaging that the elections are going to be terrible, that they would be heavily rigged, and that the outcome will be predetermined. And that negative campaigning is today affecting the way a lot of people see it. And I think that's unfortunate, because you don't dismiss a process or reach a conclusion about a process before it has even taken place. My sense is that first there was the huge disappointment of the postponement, which we didn't expect, and INEC was wrong to have assured Nigerians it will take place, and they were ready while they were not. But I think after that they did catch up quite quickly, and my sense is, on the whole, the election went well. But there are major challenges that emerged. I think the first challenge is that of thuggery. There was a lot of places where violence was provoked by certain armed people. Secondly, there was the issue about military involvement, which was very unfortunate. The military should always intervene in a neutral and non-partisan way. There are allegations that that was not always the case, and as you are aware, the military hierarchy is itself investigating that issue, although I would have preferred another body investigate rather than the military itself. The third issue or challenge that arose had to do with vote buy-in, which has become a very popular thing over the last couple of years, which is a very unfortunate development because it makes nonsense about the idea of a franchise where you vote on the basis of your assessment as a citizen of what you prefer, rather than being induced to vote in a particular way. So that has been really quite an unfortunate development. I think on what I consider the positive side is that INEC itself has become much more conscious of the importance of protecting the people's mandate. And I get very upset when people say the fact that there were a number of inconclusive elections is a sign of INEC inefficiency. On the contrary, it says two things. One, that INEC is obedient to the law, which is very categorical about the conditions for declaring elections inconclusive. The second point to make about that is that one of the terrible habits that have arisen is that when contestants see their opponents are strong in a particular place, they introduce violence so that that election, so that the votes doesn't take place there, and thereby calculating it will be cancelled and their opponent will get fewer votes. And what INEC is doing is not allowing that destruction of the process of the vote itself. And I think it's unfortunate that so many Nigerians don't understand the legal basis for declaring elections inconclusive, but above all, the democratic value of ensuring opponents do not underserve their opponents by introducing violence into their popularity areas.
All right, thank you very much, Prof. And we'll come back to you. But let's go over to our Lagos Center now, where we have two of our guests. And let's start off with Senator Labi Durojai and say, did the 2019 elections, even with the, pockets of violence here and there, did those elections justify or fulfill the expectations of the people?
Say yes. I'm positive about that. One thing about us is that we tend to be pessimistic. In every situation, we seem to not have involved that policy of yes, we can. Yes, it can be done. It's we who shouted the heavens will fall in the forthcoming in the elections. Some people were even told, we are told, traveled overseas to avoid what they thought might be a catastrophe. And then we turn around to blame the government for using some high level of security officers to ensure safety and security in the country. We are contradicting ourselves. Anyway, the basic thing I think we should do are principally two. One, to try to find out, and I think each party should do that, try to find out whether the pattern of voting has delivered a message for Nigerians. How come that almost the entire Southeast voted in one direction and South-South, and the Northwest and the Southwest voted in the other direction? And then two, what can we do about the clear message of the electorate that the two-party system is best for us? Because you could see the results are manifestly clear. There is either APC or it is PDP. The others are just runners-up. So a situation where you have 50 to 90 registered voters shows that we're not serious about the business of governing in this country. As a result, we had to have bedsheet-sized of voters' cards, very difficult to identify where your party is, the logo is. I found that difficult. Before I could locate the broom, it took me some time. And that's why many people had to stay long at the voting area. And then come to find out, check also this fact, that people just organize themselves into a party. They know they won't go far. They are only localized. Now, only to bargain with some bigger party to say, okay, all my men, all my people, I have plenty of people in our area, we do for you. What do you have for me? We are not serious. That makes it very expensive. These are areas we should check and correct. And these are things, are the lessons we have learned. By and large, I think we've done well. Because people make wrong allegations about rigging all the time. It could not have been so. The facts do not indicate it. Because on the balance, you see that the two parties are almost evenly balanced in the sense of the spread. The PDP has dominance in the southeast and south-south, and the APC, definitely the preferred party of the country, had lower representatives or support in the south-south and southeast, but more in the northwest and the southwest, and the middle belt is about evenly clear. At the end, you will find that by the gubernatorial level results, that we have a situation of 20 to 16, or 19 to 17, or perhaps 18 to 18 for of the two parties. By the time all the election results are known, if they had been rigging, they could not be so evenly balanced. So I believe we should stop destroying ourselves by negative criticisms. Let us adopt what is right, appreciate what the government is doing, what INEC has been able to pull forward, and go forward against the next time.
Well, thank you very much. So we'll just go next straight to Honorable Farouk Adamu Aliyu and say, give us your perspective on those elections.
Well, mine is that of the political elite. You know, I think by and large, most of the problems that have happened, they are caused by us, the politicians. You find out that, just like what my brother here said, when you have people coming about to form a party just for the name of it, for the heck of it, you know, so I think the National Assembly, incoming National Assembly, should look at the Constitution, because there are some constitutional issues to this. The Constitution and the Electoral Act, so that these mushroom parties should not be on the ballot, so that we don't come to be blaming INEC. You see, now, look at what INEC had to go through. Litigations upon litigations. Delay in printing the ballot papers because of litigations. I remember the INEC chairman said that, I think as 2 or 3 days before the first day of election, they had about 91 court orders. You know, so these kind of things, if we as Nigerians, as political elites, don't tell ourselves the truth, that look, this is about our country, it's about us. Let's do what is right. Election should not be a matter of life and death. Election should not be a matter of you must win. We, like some years back when we were in the opposition, we were in opposition for long. And you do not have to be in government to contribute your quota in the system. You could be in opposition because, look, there is need for opposition. So I think, by and large, to me, INEC had only one fault. That postponement, the time they did the postponement. Otherwise, INEC have done very well. The security agencies have done very well. The government has done very well in allowing people to choose with whatever party they want. And look, this is the first time that you find the head of government coming to say that go and vote for persons of your choice. Like the president never said, you must vote for APC. And I think that's good. Also, the masses in this country have taught us a lesson. There are elections that were thought to have gone the other way, but they went the other way, which means We as politicians need to learn that, look, if we truly love our country, if truly we want this country to move forward, we should look at our partners, our opposition parties, as brothers and sisters. Let's believe that we are one country, one people, and all the goals we are trying to reach is to develop this country. So as long as we have that in mind, I think we'll move forward. But so far, honestly, INEC have done extremely well, just like what the professor said. The inconclusive nature of the elections. Well, who caused it? We, the politicians, did. You find out that, yes, that's what he said. You find out that politicians go and instigate violence. So what do you want INEC to do? So we, the politicians, should probably, after this, come together as one to have a conference that how do we move our country forward? How do we move forward in 2023? There will be less inconclusive elections. There will be less violence. There will be this country at heart, not what we will get. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Back here in Abuja, well, there are so many calls for reforms in the system, and some of them have even come from INEC itself about how Nigeria should progress in the future with its elections. The question most people would ask is, do we need to go through all these rigors just to elect leaders? You talked about policing ballot papers, printing ballot papers to the standard of currency. In fact, there was a joke around town the central bank had become a storehouse, a warehouse, and things like that. And these...
It's not a joke. it's reality.
These added to the cost of the elections.
Sure did. It sure did. It really sure did. Because you do know that with these features, with the securitization of the process, these things build costs. With the number of people that we had to deploy, that's cost. With the security arrangements, that's direct costs. No, we're not going to talk of the indirect cost of the expenditure of the security agencies. We're not going to talk about its impact and effect on the economy, because regrettably, anytime we conduct elections, we have to have a lockdown of the whole country. It's because of our history. Even with the lockdown, you saw violence in some areas, widespread in some areas. Sadly, even with that lockdown. So the cost is enormous. We certainly hope that there'll be a time in this country where we'll conduct elections in the way some other countries, even neighboring countries, do, where will just be a normal working day, and you go, you cast your votes, and go about your business. Because the cost is enormous. I really don't know how sustainable this model we are working on, how sustainable it actually is. It's a big challenge. But yes, we are at the forefront of reforms, and there are so many measures we think ought to be introduced into the system that we think will add value and considerably and ensure that we have better and more cost-effective elections in the future. I don't know whether...
yes, electronic transmission of results, for instance.
Yes. Well, do you want to go the full hog of electronic, not just the transmission? But we were hoping that we'll have been able to do, we'll have had legal backing for the transmission of results, even if we don't at this stage have legal backing for actually casting of the ballot itself. There's been calls that we should go full electronic. That's a good idea, but of course, it's not a cure-all. We must be conscious of that. The less human interference in the system, the better for the process, I think. We share that view. But there are challenges, and in doing that, there must be proper planning, must be properly thought out. For example, not everywhere in this country has GSM coverage. I think it's about 98%, so 92, 98. So there's still some areas where you will not have that, and alternative measures have to be put in place in that regard. So even when you're casting or you're transmitting these results, you have to make allowance for that. If we take an example of Kenya, they almost had a constitutional crisis because of this late transmission of results. So we must fashion out a system that works for us, that has less human interference, that introduces a lot more technology. But of course, when you go online, online, you have to be careful about hackers, and that seems to be a current topic of discussion in politics now. You have to be aware of how secure your processes are, how secure your networks are. So these are issues that we must bring to the forefront. So let's not deceive ourselves that it's a very easy technology.
Right, but your manual system isn't foolproof, is it?
There's no system that is.
Right. So, well, Prof, should elections be this rigorous? Should elections in this country be such a matter where everything is locked down? There are cases before, there are cases during, there are cases after, and we have to go into all this frenzy every 4 years. And we're not thinking about the cost of those. Now, these are some of the lessons Nigerians said we should draw from what has happened. Are we going to see a rehash of this 4 years from now?
Well, I think there's a basic issue there, which is that Nigerians are committed to democracy. Nigerians love elections in which they can freely choose those who want to exercise power. But a significant part of our political class does not believe in democracy. They have developed mechanisms to essentially destroy electoral systems. So the whole issue of corruption and vote buying, the issue of deliberate introduction of violence, and the various ways through which they corrupt the electoral system means you have to take extraordinary measures to hold elections. My sense is that ultimately we'll have to go fully electronic. People should just stay at home and vote from their phones. That's where we need to go to. But as you are aware, there are now lots of fears around the world, not just here, that hacking is a serious security risk of going electronic. And a lot of the countries that were thinking of going electronic over the past 5 years have now said, let's wait, because we don't want people external to our process to hack into our systems and just destroy the basic objective of the democratic choice of citizens. So I think what this means is that we have to continue with this way we are doing it for some time. But there are, I think, significant things that need to enter the reform agenda. And there's no invention. I was in the WASE electoral reform panel, and we made fundamental propositions on how to organize our elections in a better fashion. One is reduce the burden on INEC. Why should INEC, in addition to organizing elections, be the one to register Nigerians, be the one to regulate political parties, have responsibilities for electoral crimes and all this? So we suggested create other commissions that will take the burden off INEC so that they can concentrate on their core work, which is the organization of elections. So I think the suggestions we have made for an electoral crimes commission will introduce a major issue that those who engage in electoral crimes would get punished. Now the burden on INEC is so much, they simply don't have the time to do it. Then the important issue of regulating political parties. INEC is always trying to establish peace with political parties, negotiating with them, and doing all sorts of things that diverts again its attention from its core responsibility. So I think that issue has to come back. Then thirdly, the whole organization of the data of voters. Nigeria has about 6 major organizations that capture the data of citizens. You have INEC doing it, You have the Federal Road transport people doing it. You have the banks doing it. And you have the official agency for registration of Nigerians doing it. One agency should be able to do all this and remove the burden from the other agencies. So I think there are lots of measures that we would take. They'll make things simpler, and when they are simpler and less concentrated, then the efficiency of the different agencies doing these things would increase.
You think it's virtually impossible to have Nigerians believe in themselves and believe in doing things right? And that's why you have to go to great lengths to try to prove that the process is credible?
No, what I'm saying is Nigerians will do the right thing, but a significant part of the political class will not do the right thing. They'll always try to find ways around the system. We've seen people go into elections with deliberate intention to introduce thuggery, to bribe, to do all sorts of things that are clearly illegal, if not criminal behavior. So it's the politicians that have the problem, not Nigerians.
All right. Well, Senator Durojai in our Lagos studio, talking about reforms. There have been calls for so many reforms. Is it sustainable to go on the way we are right now, to keep doing things the same way? I mean, before you know it, it will be 4 years again, and we'll start all over again. You know, before the electoral body will come out with guidelines, there'll be litigations all over the place. There'll be litigations when the process is on, and of course we do expect that there will be after the process. Can we go on now? Imagine the huge funds that you have to put aside for just elections, funds that you could deploy to other areas of development.
Election here has been more expensive than necessary. If you look at United States of America, look at the Northwest state, the Los Angeles area there. The size of that state alone, California, is about the size of Nigeria. Texas also as big as we are. They have only two senators each. The 50 states have only 2 senators each. The reform should start from the end, the objective of making our electoral process less expensive and ipso facto making politics less attractive to those who see it as commercial or quick way to money and fame. What should be the yardstick should be service to the nation, and not a situation where godfathers will recruit people, including thugs, to back them up, including a lot of money to fill them on to be able to get to a target. And then the purpose is not to serve this nation, but to become more grandiose and get more money. That is area we should attack. In my first intervention, I said the parties, the two larger parties, should undertake studies, promote studies, and whatever they find out should be given to government, probably to do something about it, getting a panel to look into how do we reform our system. For example, the remuneration to legislators should be looked into. What we spend in making law is more expensive than is necessary. And then we also should look at the background of people who will represent us. The rate we are going, one could be an armed robber, professional armed robber. If he gets enough money and is able to buy his way through, he will become a legislator to make laws for us. Such a situation, that's the absurdity that the trend we are following may lead to, and we must block it before it gets there. And I think the parties, or if the government will set up a panel of pundits to examine this last election, what went wrong, what are the messages we could learn objectively, I'm sure we get results. Someone says something about electoral voting, electronic voting. The whole world cannot be going in one direction and then we're crawling behind it. Eventually we get there. But with a frame of mind, anything that doesn't satisfy us, we feel is foul. If you don't win, we don't have the sportsman-like spirit of saying, yes, I lost this election, congratulations to only 2 people I know of this recent election. The gentleman, governor of Oyo State, and the candidate in Lagos, the PDP candidate in Lagos, who acknowledged the success of their competitor, their opponent. We don't know how to do it. We must say it's fault. We must go to court. We must continue to fight, even when it is very obvious. You see a very wide gap of election, we are not seeing us satisfied. So all that cannot help because the objective is not service, but what we can get out of it. These are the areas we should examine critically and properly. As to coming back to what I said earlier about electronic, even if we introduce it now, people will still not be satisfied. The allegation of rigging will be louder because there's possibility of hacking. Even the United States of America, with all their maturity and advancement in technology, you know, there's still that question mark hanging on the head of their president as to the method by the way he got there. Was it really through popular vote or elsewhere? Did somebody do some hacking or something of that nature? If it were here, I don't think that man would have remained in power for this much. We would have tried to hack him down. So these are all these things that we need to really go into to make things better. The quality of people who will go into our legislature and those who will represent us, those who will be our governors. And situation where people make the legislature the retirement avenue for after 8 years as governor, you want to retire into the Senate. Do you have fresh ideas to bring into this? The oldest Senate known to history was the Roman Senate, the Senate of Cicero, the Senate of people like Caesar, people who come and debate, very accomplished people. Some of them were lawyers, some of them were retired generals, some were rich aristocrats, farmers, and so on. Mature people went into legislature. It's not just money misroad who will represent us. These are some of those things we should do, apart from regulating that only 2-party system should stay, an opportunity for independent candidacy. So that if you cannot fall in, you have an ideology. APC is known for welfareism. PDP is known for whatever is their motto. Then, if you are still not satisfied with either of the two, then you can be an independent candidate in your own area. There should be some arrangement where that can be done. We should institutionalize that. As a gentleman from Abuja said a few minutes ago, I agree with him, that we cannot put all the blame on INEC. The situation is cumbersome. In India, we have the equivalent of our own organization, the Nigerian Communications Commission. We have the TRI there, the agency regulating telecommunication in India. They organize identification mechanism twice in everybody's lifetime. At the age of 5, every child will have biometrics recorded. The center of the eye, the thumb, all the 10 fingers are taken. Then at the age of 15, when the eye should have matured, you have it a second time. It is the same statistics that we use for your driving license, for your voter's card, for admission into university or schools or national use, whatsoever. It's the one we use for your passport, the one we use for road safety, everything. Once we have that done, then the burden on INEC, as the gentleman said, which I agree with, will certainly be reduced. If we concentrate on conduct of election only, but there must be rules to make election less commercial than it is. This is my intake, this second intervention. Thank you.
This is coming in from Yobe. If Ilya is still with us on this program, Ilya from Yobe, go right ahead.
Hello, good evening to you.
Good evening.
Hello, good evening to you.
Yes, good evening, Ilya. Go ahead.
My own contribution to this discussion is that the effort of INEC is really recommendable. That is to my side. And as Professor said, concerning the issue of going to electronics in conducting election in Nigeria, besides the issue of hiking, as said by Professor, my own fear as a young Nigerian also, is the issue of illiteracy, level of illiteracy in Nigeria. I think at this our point, we are not really ready to go for electronic voting due to the level of illiteracy. If government should go for that, at least the level of illiteracy should be tried, the government should try and reduce it. As I am living in the other sector, even this time when you go to some villages, even for them to recognize logos of a political party is difficult, besides talking of using electronic machines to vote. So that one is a very serious case. That is my contribution to the discussion. Thank you for having my call.
All right. Thank you very much, Ilya from Yobe. Let's return to Lagos now, and Honorable Farouk Aliu. Yes, reforms have been proposed, and well, you had Ilya, who just called in from Yobe. He's talked about the level of literacy of voters, particularly in the rural areas, even identifying the logos. And here we are with some 91 parties. 73 of them went for the presidency.
Let me first respond to my take on. Let me call on the government to, as a matter of urgency, let this government, the way the government is concentrating, on fight against corruption, the government needs to show example on certain politicians that have perpetrated violence this time around, so that it will send a lesson, clear lesson. Whether a former governor, minister, member, rich man, anybody, let the people of this country know that, look, you cannot perpetrate violence and go scot-free. 4 years later, you will come and do it again. So I think this government needs to, as a matter of urgency, to please look seriously into those that have brought about violence this time around. Now, coming to the person who spoke and some of my colleagues here, look, I still do not agree that we should continue to say we are illiterate, we cannot move forward. The Kenya we talk about, there's this M-Pesa. Virtually in Kenya, everybody pays with electronic mode. You buy firewood with electronic mode, you pay things. So look, let's move forward. And I'm sure Nigeria as a country is one of the most literate countries in Africa. So let's move forward. Let's teach our people. Let's people understand that, look, we need to move forward. And we must go digital. Simple. This world has gone ahead. We cannot stay all the time that, look, we have to take it easy, we can't do that. No, we have to just move along with the world. So look, let's try this time around. The members of National Assembly should look at adjusting the Electoral Act so that some degree of electronic can be involved, can be introduced for us to learn. Just like the way this the card reader was introduced. It wasn't there, and it's doing a very good job. So let them look at the possibility of electronic transmission. Let them look, we have to move ahead. So I think honestly we should, as a people, and look, it's all attitudinal change. If as a people that we agree that politics is not a matter of life and death. My brother here said only 2 governors conceded. I think the governor of Bauchi also has done that. The governor of Gombe has done that. And few other ones, yes, have conceded. So we politicians should understand that, look, anybody that loses election, even if you're going to court, because the law says that once you are declared, you are the winner. You can congratulate your opponent and then go to court. Nobody stops you from going to court. But at least let the people see that there is unity amongst us, the politicians. Let the people understand that, look, it's not a matter of life and death. But I think the perquisite reasons in politics, it's making the whole enterprise so attractive. People kill themselves to be in political offices. I think we also as a nation need to look at a enumeration of legislators, people in offices, so that there would be less attraction. And then even with the attraction, the government should be more serious in dealing with people that violate the rules of the country. And I do not subscribe to setting up electoral crime commission. We have enough laws. We have enough regulatory agencies to deal with all these people. Let the government of the day show an example. There are so many high up people that have been behind this violence across the country. So let government involve the agencies to investigate and prosecute them. Thank you.
Let me put this to you. You can have so many parties, and someone said nothing wrong in having 200 parties, but do you need 91 parties on the ballot?
You know, that's also what I said, that I think members of National Assembly should look at the Constitution and the Electoral Act in probably weeding away all these parties, or to put some stringent, rules that you need to do X, Y, Z before I even registered. Even if you are, because there are some section of the Constitution that allows freedom of association and so on and so forth, it has to be tinkered with so that the election will be less expensive for us. Because just like what Mr. Uzi said, look, the monies that are supposed to be used for water, electricity, and so on, those are the kind of monies that are being used to go and put security on a piece of paper that would be just used once and being thrown away. So I think we as a people need to look at this and ensure that, look, let's do what is right. Let people, in the name of God, let people not just come out and form parties for the heck of it.
With the issue of 73 parties on the ballot for the presidential election and 91 parties generally taking part there, INEC always says, well, they fulfilled the conditions for registration. And even as we speak, part of the reforms that have been quoted also have a system where you could shed some of those parties who fail to attain any reasonable spread in the elections. But then the basic condition of fulfilling the basic, conditions which they need to fulfill, would that not still make them put back, you take about 20 out of the system and you put back 50 or 100?
Yes, well, that's a decision Nigerians as a people we have to take. Recall that when INEC introduced some measures that certain Nigerians thought were stringent, basically have offices in at least 24 states. I think that was basically it. There was a rebellion of sorts, and people said, no, don't close up the democratic space. You must open up the democratic space. I think that was the battle cry. And that case ended up in the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, yes, these people are right, because in your constitution, these stringent measures are not there. You cannot introduce other measures that are not in the constitution. I think allusions, your guests in Lagos have said, made allusions that you probably have to amend the constitution. And you're right, the fourth alteration to the Constitution introduced into the Constitution the right to deregister political parties, gave INEC powers to register political parties. One, if they no longer meet the requirements for registration, and two, if they don't get a certain threshold of percentage of votes in a series of elections. Now, your question is apt. Yes, you have introduced this to register, but you've not altered the conditions for registration. So in as much as you may be able to weed out some political parties, you've not shut the doors to more political parties coming. I believe it was Prof who made allusions to the fact that, look, if you go on, there's a freedom of association, and some people feel that open up the space, people should be able to associate and form political parties if they so choose. But in terms of management of the process, is it desirable? Is it sustainable? Is it good for the country to have as many political parties? There are different schools of thought. In the Republic of Benin, they have more parties than we do. In Chad, and I believe in Niger, they have more political parties. I use this because they are neighboring countries. But in many of those countries, in some countries, people also refer to India with, I think, up to 2,000 political parties. But in India, you have regional parties and you have central parties. Regional parties cannot contest national elections. And in some of these instances, some countries have a way, they say, okay, fine, you can register as many parties as you want to, but there has to be criteria for access to the ballot. You must meet certain threshold to get on the ballot. So whatever it is, Nigerians, through their chosen representatives, will probably have to amend the law to lay out the formula that best suits this country in view of our history, our culture, and everything else. We don't pretend as if we have all the answers. There are arguments for this and the arguments against it. But I think there seems to be a consensus building up that we have to do something about the large number of political parties. So you may buy into that, or you may be in the school of thought and say, look, no, let the parties exist, but let there be thresholds for getting on the ballot. And then there's also the issue of independent candidacy. And I think the senator in Lagos did make reference to, allow only 2 parties, but allow independent candidacies. I don't know if that's what Nigerians want, so be it.
All right. Still more calls coming through before we take a break. Lagos, I believe. Yeah. Okay. Right, we don't have that yet coming through. So
yes, this is Solid from Lagos.
Yes.
Yeah, please, I just have a contribution to make.
Mm-hmm.
I think looking at what we experienced in this past election, one of the ways, in my opinion, we can curb this violence is by insisting that even when there is violence in any polling unit, even after we know, based on the guidelines, that somebody has won, but we should go back there and reconduct that election. I think it might be one of the ways of discouraging people from disrupting polling units, the voting. Because if you destroy the voting, it doesn't still stop us from going back there to reconduct the election. Yes, we might be losing money, but I think it's a way of stopping people going to disrupt or burn cars or whatever, or carrying boxes. Because if they know that whatever they do, we'll go back there to repeat it. I think that will help. That's my contribution. Thank you very much.
All right. So thank you very much. At this point in time, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll consider other calls, other reforms that Nigerians are proposing to make the system a lot better. But stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
Nigerians. Our fearless officers and men of the Nigerian military are winning the war against Boko Haram. Today, all occupied territories have been recovered and Boko Haram has been degraded. Our affected brothers and sisters are getting their lives back. However, they are now after you and me. In our mosques, churches, schools, motor parks, markets, entertainment centers, and public gatherings. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me. Nigeria, unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed their comfort and even shed their blood. We cannot at this point in history afford to spirit away their sacrifices for immediate but temporary gains of today. Let us emphasize what unites and not what divides us. Working for the unity of purpose with a stronger vision for a better tomorrow. NTA, growing with the nation.
Nigeria, the only country we can train with remarkable potentials to excel. Let us believe in ourselves and change our attitude for the sake of our country and generations unborn. Let us revive our cultural values, which are our essence as a nation. Let us renew the spirit of patriotism and hope in our dear country. Do not take or give bribe. Be punctual always. No more African time. We can't expect to be global citizens and operate on African time. Join the queue. Insist that people are attended to on a first-come basis, no matter who they are or where they come from.
Nigeria, good people, great nation.
Make you report any crooked person, object or wakajube movement to police and security agent demo.
The security of our nation now work for all of us, plus including me and you.
Nigeria, make we unite against terrorism. Now, Federal Minister of Information and Culture bring on this message.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. Right, Professor Jibril Ibrahim, we may talk about reforms. We may examine the performance of INEC. We may talk about all what it has put in place to ensure free, fair, and credible elections. But what about some of the key actors in the whole process, the politicians themselves, their agents, and people who have to do with driving the process? There are reports of those whose agents, politicians, whose own agents were compromised during the polls. In other words, people who were supposed to be at these centers to look out for the interests of their principals, they turned their backs, appended their signatures to certain falsehoods, and collected money. This, we talk about vote buying. This now seems to be like agent buying. So what's in the psyche of the people that they do not believe in a process and the thought that everything is up for sale?
Well, I think the first problem we have is that we don't have commitment to political parties. Parties don't have ideologies and what they stand for. Because if in a normal democracy, party agents will be people who join those parties because they believe in their ideology, who have worked for the party, who have been volunteers. So it doesn't even arise that you pay them. They are doing it because they believe in it. In our context, however, this whole election, when you ask people what does each party stand for, they don't know. So that's the core problem. We need to change the culture of our politics so that parties themselves stand for something. You recall in the Second Republic, people knew what the parties stand for. UPN was for education. That's their focus. MPN was for housing. PRP was for Talakawa, the poor, lifting them up out of poverty. So people then joined these parties because they identified with these ideological positions. But currently, you look at our 91 parties, you don't know what they stand for. So those who come as party agents are doing it as a commercial activity. And of course, if it's a commercial activity, if others are able to pay you a higher price, then you will accept that higher price. So the first issue we need to do is to encourage these parties to be very clear on what they stand for and to get people to join parties because they believe in it. So now when a big boss in a party doesn't get nomination and changes party, all these people follow him, which means they never believed in that party in the first place. They believed in the boss. So we're doing what's called patron-client relations, where people follow big bosses because they will have some pickings and sidelines on the table. So I think that's the first thing we need to address. The second issue, we've had an earlier discussion that we need a two-party system. That's not really the point. The point is we have a two-party system. because two-party system doesn't mean there aren't other parties, but that those two parties or three parties are the ones that matter. What we need to do, and I've been saying this for a very long time, is you can have as many parties as possible, but place conditionalities for these parties being on the ballot so that we don't have these bogus ballots that we had during these elections. In Senegal, you can't be on the ballot if you can't get 10,000 people who are on the voters list in each district to recommend you for the presidency. In Nigeria, we have presidential candidates that scored less than 2,000 votes. So obviously, nobody knew them. They had no reach. And in any rational country, they would not be allowed on the ballot. France has the same thing. The United States has the same thing. So countries don't, because of this issue of freedom of association, which is a fundamental principle in democracies, you don't want to restrict the number of parties. But what you want to do is to make sure before those parties can be on the ballot, they must prove they have widespread support so that they can stand on their feet, and when they contest, it's a real contest.
We have another caller on the line from Oshun, this time Vincent. Thanks for staying on the line. Hello.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I'm listening. Hello?
Right, go right ahead, Vincent. Hello, Vincent, you're on.
Yeah, I want to say something. I have a little question to make. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Go right ahead, go ahead.
Yes. I said on the just concluded election, you know, most times I do think in this country, the way things used to go, in this country, most times I don't just get it. Why should people want to disrupt the election? So, get away with the ballot box, so own some things and spoil things. This should not go this way. One thing I want everybody in this country to know is that we all are Nigerians. Nigeria is our country. We cannot afford to spoil this country. That is one. Secondly, is that our leaders, most of our leaders, they are not godly. Even though we have two parties, or even one party, or even phony party, the thing is that our leaders are they godly. You know? You know, listening?
Yes.
Hello?
All right, go ahead, we're still with you.
Yes. Our leaders are not godly.
Okay.
They see political offices as a means of saying, making money, looting, and so much are suffering. I'll keep on saying about Egypt, India, for our country. Why can't we treat this country that we Nigerians will see happy? Last 2 days I was watching a program about napkins on the NTA. I saw some Nigerian guys outside the country. Some of them, they will receive that they are going to Malaysia, and so on and so forth. And besides, they are going there to, as a commercial sex workers. This is not good. Now, we have the fear of God. If only when we have the fear of God, we know that going to politics is a service to the nation, service to humanity. Know that we must give account. One, if you are a governor, if you are a president, if anything, if you occupy any political office, even though you are nominated as a minister or a commissioner, you must know that I must give account of how do I manage my office when it is in my hands. So the things that our leaders don't even fear God. Because
okay.
Everything and people are suffering. Look at it now.
All right.
The poor man in this country now, the poor man is able to go to school. School, people have to train. School, they can go to school. And every time the election comes up, people will just line up. So we will stay from 7 o'clock to 12. We vote. And after everything, just keep on going like this. But I think I want to commend the present administration of President Muhammadu Buhari. I think from the recent 4 years, even to this time, he has been doing well. Especially, I think, because fighting corruption, I think corruption is one of the key problems of the country.
Okay.
Corruption. People go to politics to make money.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Vincent from Osun. Two things, the level of corruption and, of course, people should be conscious of the spiritual hereafter. But while we're here at the natural, let's look at some other trends. And yes, we've talked about corruption agent buying, not vote buying this time. But again, the elections took place, and some Nigerians say a new trend has become noticeable. Now, even though you have those parties, and like Prof said, people don't believe in the parties, there's no clear-cut ideology, but then it would seem as if people are now talking about individuals. They vote one way in one election and vote another in another election. Did you notice that trend? This time, let's start with Farouk Aliu.
You see, first things first. You see, Nigerians, even with the threat made by Mr. President that ballot box snatchers should be dealt with, still they were ballot snatching. You know, so it's in us, Nigerians. So I think we need to look at ourselves, and you know, it really baffles me as a people that why should we kill ourselves? Why should we abuse ourselves? Why should we do all these things that will cause about mayhem? And that's why I said in some places you find out that the masses have taught us, the politicians, a lesson, where today you will vote for A and the next day you vote for another person. And I think it is good for democracy. Unfortunately, yes, there is no party none of the parties, it's built around any ideology. Yes, we go after persons, people that we think, we believe they can lead us either as presidents or as governors or as members of National Assembly. Until such a time when we as a people also believe that, look, back in the days of NPN, when they said NPN, housing also, and so on like that. But even now, you find out that when you talk of PDP, they still talk about power to the people. When you talk of APC, they also talk about their own. So I think it is also good for the system that anybody that has not done well should not be voted in again. Or anybody that is perceived not to do well should not be voted until such a time when we build the parties along ideology, we build the nation along party lines that can take us to the next level.
Senator Durojai, were you surprised about the shift in certain areas, the trend you saw in voting pattern in some parts of the country?
Surprised at all. In fact, it's kudos for the electorate that they are getting more alert and responsible for their choice. The fact you have mentioned twice now that people tend to vote for individuals rather than parties. Now, to some extent, it's a mark of maturity. If people have a grudge against a leader, the opportunity for them to demonstrate the supremacy of the people over their delegates, the representative, is to vote them out. And that has happened in many places. Talking about parties, when parties were parties, there was discipline, and that is what must be reintroduced into party structure. If you do not fall in line with the ideology of your party, then you fall out. In promoting the idea of two-party system, I have two examples to give. One, a national one in Nigeria here. One of the lasting legacies President Ibrahim Babangida left behind was the question of two-party structure, which he introduced. One a little to the left, the other a little to the right. That's what he said. We were those who handled the registration at that time in 1989. Now, and it was anchored along ideologies. So you either fall in, you fall out. Now, the gentleman who said the fundamental right of people's liberty and so on, liberty has limits. You will remember the story of John Plowman. An elderly man was coming along a bush path, and a young man was coming in the opposite direction, swinging a stick in the air. Then, when they were about to meet, the old man said, "Hey, check out, young man. Remember, I'm coming opposite. Don't hit me with your stick." He said, "I'm exercising my liberty." The young man said he was exercising his liberty in swinging the stick in the air. Then the old man told him, "Your liberty ends where my nose begins." So there's a limit to the fundamental right about this liberty to just deviate. If you deviate, you fall out, and the party has a right to dismiss or sack you from its membership if you do not fall in line. Look at the countries that have practiced democracy successfully, i.e. United Kingdom. For 3 centuries, they operate largely on two-party structure. Little third one or fourth one occasionally, but basically two-party, conservative and Labour, or progressive. Then USA, for about 2 1/4 centuries, they practice democracy. They operate largely on two-party structure. So if you really have something new to say that you cannot fall by the ideology, which is welfareism, for those in APC, the gentleman was saying, what the APC stands for. APC is known for welfareism. And that was what the old actual group at UPN stood for. And it goes on like that. Welfareism, the welfare of the people, is the supreme law. That's what we stand on. Anyone who wants to be a member should buy into that. These are fundamental things on principles. And that is what we should do in registering party. We cannot say liberty, therefore have 100 to 50. It's chaos. And it cannot help the country. And it's too expensive. We must cut on this and have money for more productive things like fixing our electricity, the other fundamental things that we need to do about to make this country move forward.
Let's see if we can get in this call from Ogun. And it's coming from Success. Success, who's calling us from Ogun. Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Yes, Success, go right ahead.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Silvio.
Yes, good evening. Go right ahead.
What I would like to say as a young Nigerian is that the electioneering of Nigeria is too expensive. Look at the level of unemployment in this country. And we are spending close to 400 billion on election alone. It's appalling. I can't even bear it. Then secondly, the monetizing of political posts in Nigeria. Look at the kind of money you spend to contest election. Look at the kind of budget you have to vie for a political post in Nigeria. Look at the kind of money you spend. Look at the places you have to get money from. People use their properties, their house, their life savings, their total investment to just buy a political position in Nigeria. And if you do that, it's an investment. You can't tell me as a person to invest such in business and don't get my money back. So, as it has been said before, there is no point for service. Nobody is having the service to humanity in mind. You can't spend such amount of money and tell me I won't make profit. But if some people can contest election in this country, campaign, and get into office by people's votes, not by their finance or by their connection, but by people's votes, you will find that we have changes in this country. And secondly, lastly to say, is what I would add by the amounts of money being paid in this office, like governors, senators, the money they get home as their take-home pay is too much. That is why everybody wants to die to be a senator, everybody wants to die to be a governor, no matter what it costs. If they lose elections, it's as if they've lost their life. So they have to at least make sure that we remove monetization of our politics. We will find out that we will take this country to the highest level. And thank you, and you guys are doing a very good job. God bless you.
All right, thank you very much. Success calling in from Ogun. Back here in Abuja. Prof, what did you see about the pattern of voting? People have pointed to, otherwise strongholds that were lost to the opposition. Does that say to you that there is an improvement in maturity? Senator Durujai said that's a sign of maturity. What are your views on that?
I think very clearly Nigerian citizens are beginning to understand the notion of democracy, which is that you assess people in government. When they perform, you reward them by re-electing them. When they do not perform, you remove them from office. And we're definitely beginning to see an increase in terms of citizen sanction of poor performance. That's extremely important. And it is we are hoping that this new tendency will continue to get entrenched. But at the more broad level, when you look at the pattern of the vote, you just have to look at the map of the vote. It's extremely ethnic, regional, and religious, with the southeast, the south-south, and the eastern middle belt voting one way, and then the northern Muslim community and a part of the southwest voting the other way. I think one of the important things about this country is that we need to go beyond that ethno-religious voting pattern and encourage citizens to look at candidates not just in terms of what's their own identity, but what's their capacity to perform in governance. But of course, this is something that takes time. This is something that really needs citizens to understand what people who contest stand for, so that they can make their choice on the basis of much more rational conditions. So I'm quite disturbed about the pattern of the vote, which poses a lot of questions. The other issue is this whole election has been extremely divisive, and Nigerians were split right down the middle, and it is important that at this point the president keeps to his victory pledge of introducing a more inclusive government so that all Nigerians will believe they are part of this process of democracy that's operating in the country.
All right. Let's go back to the phones now, and we have from Jigawa, Ibrahim calling in. Hello, Ibrahim. Ibrahim, are you with us? Hello?
I'm Ibrahim Guman from Jigawa.
Yes, go right ahead.
Yeah, I wish to commend the INEC for its performances in the recently concluded general elections. Given the nature of the subversive nature of the political elites in Nigeria, who regard elections as a matter of life and death. Similarly, I wish to advise against the use of electronic voting even in the year 2023. because the majority of Nigerians are rural dwellers, coupled with low level of education and public enlightenment. Another point I would like to speak on is the money and other emoluments being paid to our elected leaders. Please, it should be reduced to reasonable level so that to make room for other essential services and the jobs to be provided to Nigerians. Are you hearing me, please?
Yeah, sure, we are. Go right ahead, yes.
Another thing worthy of notation is the way godfathers and the people who have acquired money or with no substantial, visible means of livelihood raise money to buy votes just to become legislators and political office holders. If such trends continue, our youth will not be serious on the pursuit of other endeavors that will ensure the positive development of the country. They will use their time to enter politics to the detriment of pursuing careers that will ultimately produce better results for Nigeria and Nigerians. With these remarks, I sincerely hope that next time efforts should be made to ensure that region and electoral violence are brought to the barest minimum. Thank you. Good night.
All right. Thank you very much, Ibrahim from Jigawa. Now let's come back to the election management body. And we talked earlier on about the number of litigations, court orders, and pronouncements, which sometimes get very confusing, go in one direction, and before we have time for it to sink in, another, counter order comes in. And we have a recent one now in the case of Zamfara.
That's correct.
And what is the scenario like? The court has made its pronouncements.
Well, first of all, let me just give a little background. Litigations per se are not a bad thing. It's a civilized, legal way to resolve disputes, political disputes, or any dispute for that matter that arises, although some have made a case for alternate dispute resolution. But the laws tend to encourage people who feel they have a grievance to approach the courts or the tribunal to resolve those grievances. In democracy, that's the main way of resolving your differences. Now, in specific to Zamfara, first of all, there are more than 600, we've received more than 600 cases arising out of party primaries. It's unprecedented. More than 600 cases arising out of the party primaries. Those are internal, intra-party affairs within the same family. And almost all parties are guilty of this almost in equal measure. So there's a problem there. And the danger in that is that, yes, it's the best way, it's the reasonable way, it's the lawful way. You might clog up the system. The lawyers will tell you now that so many judges are involved in political cases. Other cases suffer. It's opportunity cost. A judge can only take so many cases. He can only hear so many cases. And because of the urgent nature of most of these political cases, they take precedence over other cases. There are criminal cases hanging in there, murders, kidnappings, serious things happen there. There are commercial cases. People owing banks cannot recover their money. They are investors, and the first thing an investor comes and looks at is, what is the system? If there's any dispute, how do I get out my money, or how do I resolve disputes? So when it's just what we've been talking about since, when you concentrate resources so much in one thing, other things must give, other things must suffer. Now, INEC is a necessary respondent. And out of these 600 cases, more than 600 cases, INEC was the defendant, was the respondent in each and every one of those cases. This is the season for petitions, and petitions have started flying in. And in each of those petitions, INEC must be a respondent. INEC must be joined. That's what the law says. because it's the body that conducted those elections. So we now have to have a huge war chest. We have more than 100 lawyers in the employ, good lawyers as well, hardworking lawyers in the employ of the commission, but they cannot cope with the deluge of cases that have to come. And in law, you cannot say a case, just look at it and say this is a frivolous case. Yes, by your assessment it is, but it still has to be ventilated in court. The judge still has to look at it, whether he has jurisdiction, and look at the case that of yesterday. The judge said, look, I don't have jurisdiction, but he had already made an order to preserve, so we could not continue with Bauchi because we had to, it's the rule of law, we had to obey the order.
Right.
Fair enough, you let's say, oh, I made this order here, but I haven't raised this issue of jurisdiction, I've looked at it. I don't have jurisdiction to entertain this matter, so struck out the case and struck out the injunction he granted. That's why we're able to go back to Tafawa Balewa and conclude that case.
Right.
Now, in some other people will probably have rushed to the appeal court and say, stay action. Let me, until I ventilate it in the court of appeal. In Zamfara, it's a very interesting one. And this is part of the problem, not just that litigation is a bad thing in itself, but where courts start giving conflicting orders, courts of coordinate jurisdiction, you have a problem there. So in Zamfara, on the same day, we got two conflicting decisions of High Court. The High Court in Gusau said, look, we're satisfied that they were primaries. Their names have to be on the ballot. The one in Abuja said, no, Inek, you were correct. There are no primaries. And if you didn't have primaries, the political parties are drivers of democracy. You cannot have people coming out of a democratic process who are not Democrats. Political parties must be democratic. And internal party democracy is an essential to give a good, stable democracy. So you did not do this. So because of Section 87 of Electoral Acts, you cannot sponsor candidates. 2. Now, that is the worst position anybody or any person, legal person, can be in. Because one says do, one says don't. Mm-hmm. In obeying one, you must disobey the other. And that's not good. A litigant should never be made to choose which order of court to obey. It destroys the ethos and the very essence of litigation process. So in Zamfara now, they were fortunate because of the postponement. It benefited some people, and because of the postponement, initially we're not going to have them there because we thought we were right. The postponement now came, and in between they got this judgment saying that they must be on the ballot, and that's how they got on the ballot.
Now the
Court of Appeal has said no, this was wrong. INEC was right all the time. That we're not satisfied that primaries were conducted, and so because you did not conduct primaries, you've offended Section 87. You've acted in contradiction of Section 87. You had no candidates at the election. That's the effect.
So what that means is that in Zamfara, the APC has no candidate.
Well, now you have to interpret that judgment. The judgment will not go as far as to say that, but yes, you did not sponsor candidates. And coincidentally, in the governorship and state assembly elections, I understand that APC won all the seats.
So that's why Nigerians are asking, what does that mean if the court says...
More litigations. Because we now have to interpret that. First of all, let us go to the National Assembly. They have been given their certificates of return by the Commission based on that court judgment. But that is the fulcrum, that is the bottom. The bottom has been knocked off. What is the value of those certificates that this gentleman hold and ladies hold today?
They are null and void.
Well, fair enough in law, in the eyes of the law. By the way, they still have one more step because they can still go to the Supreme Court. What do we wait? Or the Supreme Court takes it to the Supreme Court takes a decision, or the certificates are null and void, and then what is the next thing that shall happen? Then the House of Assembly and the governorship. This case has to be resolved because on May 29th, the sitting governor has to vacate his seat. And a governor has to be sworn in. Who is the governor? Which person will be a person? Court of Appeal has held that APC has no candidates. Legal quagmire.
The position of INEC now, the position of the Independent National Electoral Commission is, well, you say you'll study the...
yes, the judgment was received yesterday. We have to look at it very carefully. It throws up so many issues. Does the Commission have a right to withdraw those certificates it had previously issued? If it does, what next step should it take? Should it hand over certificates to the runner-ups? If it does that, is it the certificate itself? What does the certificate certify? Do we have to go back to the ECHE, the result sheet and the declaration, and make a fresh declaration that in view of this court judgment, we have to make a fresh declaration and first of all, declare those people who came second. If they satisfy the condition of the governorship, for example, they have to satisfy, apart from scoring majority of lawful votes, and the operative vote is lawful. So any vote, some people believe, any vote for the APC was a nullity, as Prof said. So it's not a vote. It's just like voting for 3 different candidates. It's a cancelled vote. Interesting scenarios.
Senator Olabi Duruja, you also are a lawyer, and this is where we started from. One step forward, I don't know how many steps backwards. And the electorate get the more confused. People trooped out and cast their ballot. And somewhere in between, we cannot understand what's going on.
Well, I will come to that question in a minute. But let me refer briefly to what our brother Ibrahim from Gumel said about people having no facilities to electronic services in rural areas. To tell him that the organization I work for, the NCC, has attained 33% already as of last week of coverage of the country by fiber linkages, making communication easier to every area of the country. By the grace of God, before the next election, the whole country, those underserved and unserved areas of the country will be adequately covered so that we can join the rest of the world in modernizing. Now, as to the question about the judiciary itself is on trial. The whole world is watching. We don't want a scenario where it can be said that the judiciary is saying, if you tackle me, I will double you. If the executive has exercise power in one direction, we too have powers we can exercise in another. Far from it, we must avoid a situation that arises. Otherwise, it will lead to chaos. The judiciary is the last hope of the common people for justice to be done. But when you overheat the system, we come across what the moderator has just referred to, apparent confusion. A decision in one direction by a court of equivalent jurisdiction, power, as the decision by another court of equivalent jurisdiction in another part of the country. It's confusing. So when it comes like that, what should happen is to order a re-election. But the status quo ante must be maintained. The last, what the INEC said last, must be sustained until a re-election is done for the people who are the ultimate decision makers. Say, yes, if you are in doubt, this is the party or this is the person we voted for last time and we are confirming it this time. I think that's about the way out. The whole world is watching how we are playing this game. We must allow the rule of law to prevail, and the burden is on the judiciary itself to make sure that it's consistent with its calling of being blind to parties to do it and administering justice with the sword in his hand without seeing whose horse is God.
Honorable Farouk, what's your view on this?
My views are, one, I'm not a lawyer, but, the court ought to have probably given a consequential order. Now, I honestly pity INEC. I sympathize with them because, look, what are they going to do? Now, if in the judgment, I read a portion where the judge said that this is a bitter pill for the political parties. Why should the judiciary punish few individuals at the instance of so many people? And then also, well, if this stands, it is true, the political parties need to ensure probity, need to ensure inclusiveness, need to ensure they follow their rules and regulation. And as long as that is not done, yes, there is no democracy. But honestly, I think INEC is really in a tight situation, and I hope they come out clean. Thank you.
Prof, does speak to the issue of internal democracy, because that was where the whole Zamfara scenario started off from. There were, wranglings, intra-party fights, and 600 cases, like INEC said, intra-party crisis. And this has now played out to this level where the voters are confused.
Yes, indeed. The weakest element in Nigerian democracy is the lack of internal party democracy. People want to impose candidates without going through rules and procedures that they have set themselves. There are two sets of rules for primaries. One is what the law says in the Electoral Act. Secondly, what the parties themselves decide. But you have a situation in which people bring in thugs to disrupt primaries and then go and hold alternative primaries that are organized contrary to all the laws set by the state, as well as the rules and procedures established by the parties themselves. And I think on this issue of Zamfara, the judiciary is right. They do not want to accept illegality producing positive results for people who have been completely lawless in their action. You recall that thugs were brought in to disrupt numerous attempts to organize the Zamfara primaries. And that sort of behavior cannot be accepted if we want to deepen our democracy. And the whole matter goes back to what I was saying earlier. Parties need to stand for things. And if people know what they stand for, and if these parties have members, then they can be disciplined and impose the order of the party. But right now, the way we operate our parties is that they are godfathers who own either the entire party or sections of it or specific branches. And whatever those godfathers want to do is what happens. You cannot operate a democracy on the basis of godfathers. Parties are supposed to be open to everybody. They are supposed to follow general rules, and they are not supposed to act outside those rules that have been established. And I think one of the most important things going forward is addressing this issue of internal party democracy and how candidates emerge.
Well, obviously one of the bitter pills, I'm borrowing the words of the court now about the bitter pill that the party had to swallow. One of the bitter pills for INEC would be the challenge of logistics, which led to that postponement the first time around. And so going forward, what have you drawn from that? Some people have talked about the reliance on external forces to be able to perform INEC's function. So what have you drawn from that as something to that would help you plan ahead?
Well, it's logistics has always been a challenge, and there are many reasons for these logistical challenges. One, surprisingly, I think Senator Odrai made reference to it earlier on, was uncertainty as to who the candidates are. So in Zamfara, for example, and talking about costs, we had to make adequate arrangements. If the court rules this way, what do we do? If it rules that way, what do we do? And the court ruled for this re-election. We now had to print 2 sets of ballot papers. As it were now, all that was a waste, because one with the APC logo on it, the other one without the APC logo on it. And these are some of the logistics. In Zamfara, we didn't start some elections on time, because one of the results sheets did not have provision for the APC to be on it. So we took the right ballot papers with the result, with the logo, but the other ones, some of the ones going to the hinterlands did not have those logos, for example. 2, we have arrangements. How many vehicles does INEC have? INEC does not have 1,000 vehicles. doesn't have a vehicle for each local government, 774 local governments. And one vehicle, one pickup will not be enough for a whole local government. So we have to rely on third parties. In some countries, they rely on the armed forces, because the armed forces outside of wartime, the greatest logistics activity undertaken by any nation are elections. So when the country is not at war, they utilize all national resources. So they have to rely heavily on the armed forces. And there are limitations in Nigeria because of our own context, how far we can rely on the armed forces. They're doing a wonderful job for us, especially as I mentioned earlier in the program, the Air Force, for example, in helping us in logistics delivery. But they also need ground support systems. So when we took some cranes, some of the materials we had to airlift were too wide for some of the jets available for the Air Force. When we got to some airports, we had to wait for hours on end because there were not enough forklifts to lift the things in the airports or the central bank facilities and things like that. All those things add to logistics challenges. And although you plan, you should factor all these things in your planning, but you probably have to, the other people you rely on, there's so much reliance on third parties.
All right.
Furthermore, you go on election day, you work with the road transport workers unions or road transport owners. And some of the drivers come on that election day, and both owners, by the way. You agree on X amount. And that day, they know that you're totally reliant on them. They say, no, we don't agree. We don't agree to that.
Time to get their bit of the cake, right?
It's that's the feeling. No, there's no patriotism there. I'm a businessman. I need money. My car, I need to do this thing. Or it's about just past midnight now. On election, they say, yeah, you had me for 24 hours, but this is the second day. So you have to now come and pay me for the second day. But this is not what we agreed to. These are some of the challenges for logistics. We had shifted, we had made plans, we shifted from deploying from the INEC local government offices direct to polling units because we saw that wasn't working, election starting so late. So we now created rack centers. If there's enough security, and even in River State, for example, some of the rack centers were overrun. In one of the elections in Bayelsa State in southern Nigeria, they didn't allow us deploy from the rack centers. All these things contribute to it, and you have to approach each one differently in a holistic manner, but also getting unique solutions to unique problems to try and solve
All
things.
right. Well, as we begin to wind down now, let's go over to Lagos and ask Senator Durojai for his closing comments as we wind down. And one thing I'd like you to talk about, some Nigerians have suggested that, look, you need to take a second look at putting unarmed security personnel in polling booths. The way some people overran these unarmed men with so much ease. As you give us your closing thoughts, or what do you say to that?
I don't think I agree with that. If you are a member of the armed forces, I believe you must be armed. You expose those young men to grave danger. If they are not armed, suppose the assailants are armed. I mean, it doesn't make sense. They have to be armed. And we get what we deserve. The romp total is what I've said before. Make election more politicking and electioneering less expensive and less attractive. Once we take the monetary aspect out of it and concentrate more on service, and the parties are few in number, like two, with identifiable ideologies, and discipline, things will be much better. All this situation of people horse trading and so on will not be there. I think the professor who referred to armed forces being used in even civilized countries, because he says, apart from the military activities, invasion or so, electioneering is the next most important thing, and you have to deploy the armed forces because they have facilities like transportation facilities and so on to assist the nation in time of need. And if they must do it, they must be armed. A soldier that's not armed is a target for marauders and for criminals. So I do not support soldiers going out without being armed. Once we demonetize the system and the emphasis is on service, the do or die aspect will be reduced, and the need for armed forces being deployed will be reduced.
On that note, we'd like to thank you, Senator Drojai, for being part of this discussion. Thank you very much. And quickly, we'll go to Honorable Farouk and say your closing comments in just about a minute.
Well, mine is still coming back to attitudinal change. We as a people need to agree to be different. We as a people need to agree that we have one country. We as a people need to agree that, look, this is our country. We need to secure it. How do we secure it? Doing things appropriately according to the rules of our country. Thank you.
Right. So I'd like to say thank you to you too for being part of this discussion. Thank you very much. Okay. Back here in Abuja, Prof. It's not over until it's over.
Yeah, well, I said at the very beginning that there are multiple narratives on this election. I think the first step we need to take is to unify the narratives. That is, we need to have a major national review about these elections. What went wrong? Why? What went right? What's our assessment of the election itself? Identify the challenges, identify the weaknesses, and develop methodologies to address the weaknesses and the challenges so that we continue this process of the constant improvement of our electoral system. That, for me, is the challenge.
All right. I'd like to thank you on that note. And, well, for INEC, we'll say, well, just as you meander through the maze.
Well, I can't disagree at all with what Prof said. I think has summarized it. We must get down to the drawing boards, look at the laws. We crave indulgence, the indulgence of the people. Say, look, understand what climate, what laws we operate. We have to get a good understanding of it. How does it suit our purposes? If it does not, how can we reform? And I agree with Honorable Farouk, the attitudinal change has to come, but that's probably a longer term thing, but we need to change our attitude.
All right. And so on that note, we'll say thank you to you two for being here. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Well, that's our program. We'd like to thank you for also being part of it. Next week, we'll reach you again on NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stover. Bye for now.